Well, hey there. Listen, I'm sending this along to you this evening just as a way of inviting you. If you weren't able to be here on Sunday, um, I made an invitation Sunday and asking our folks if they might come tomorrow evening, August 19th at 7 o'clock, for a time of prayer. And I had an opportunity, and it's a long story, I think, of how we kind of came to the conclusion that it was time to pray. What I said to the congregation was, if you are concerned about the world that we're living in and the messes that we're in, and if that is something that bothers you, curious if you would be willing to come and pray. So again, we're talking about tomorrow evening at 7. I read to them out of the book of Joel, chapter 2. And in Joel chapter 2, Joel, the prophet, is speaking to Israel in behalf of God. And Israel has been offending God and has created a lot of trouble for themselves. And God's about ready to drop the hammer on them. And he gives some input to Joel, and he describes something called a solemn assembly. And so I'm just going to read you a few verses. This is Joel, again, chapter 2, starting with verse 12. This is how it reads. Yet even now, declares the Lord, return to me with all your heart. And then he describes the way of the heart, with fasting, with weeping, and with mourning. And rend your hearts, not your garments. Return to the Lord your God, for he is gracious and merciful. He is slow to anger and abounding in steadfast love, and he relents over disaster. And this is important. Verse 14, it says, who knows whether or not he will turn and relent and leave a blessing behind him? And what he's saying is that this call to pray does not guarantee the outcome of God holding back. But he says, but what we should do is obey. And so he says, who knows whether he, speaking of God, will turn and relent and leave a blessing behind him, a grain offering, a drink offering for the Lord your God. And so he says, blow the trumpet in Zion, consecrate a fast, call a solemn assembly, gather the people, consecrate the congregation, assemble the elders, gather the children, even the nursing infants. Let the bridegroom leave his room and the bride her chamber. And you understand what he's saying is everybody come, no matter what the circumstances that you have. Between the vestibule and the altar, let the priests, the ministers of the Lord, weep and say, spare your people, O Lord, and make not your heritage a reproach, a byword among the nations, that they might say, where is their God? Now, I'm calling it, so this is, again, it's a solemn assembly is the word, and it's used throughout the Old Testament to talk about taking time out. And basically 3 things take place at a solemn assembly. First, the people come and confess their own sin and repent of their own personal sin. And then they repent and confess and repent for the sins of their people. And so as Nehemiah and Daniel both described that situation in their own lives, they said they came and repented in behalf of their nation for sins that they themselves had not personally committed, but sins that the nation had committed. And so since they were a citizen of that nation, they took responsibility before God to ask the Lord for forgiveness and to repent on behalf of the nation. So that's the second thing. We repent of our own things, then we repent of the nation. And then finally, he said to cry out for mercy for the sins and for God to withhold judgment. And remember what he said is that do this. And he said, God may or may not. He said, we're not sure how this will, the outcome of all of this. So tomorrow evening, August 19th at 7 o'clock, we're going to be meeting together in a solemn assembly. We've invited intercessors, prayer warriors from other churches to come. This will be a very simple affair. There will be no political speeches. There'll be no praying against certain politicians. And that was not what this is about. And if that's the heart of people, we won't let it happen. We want to come and repent, and we want to ask the Lord for mercy. Personally, I will be not eating tomorrow, and that's not required for you to come at 7. But if you are willing, I'd ask you to also fast with me, liquids only, during the day, and no eating until after the event, or the gathering. It's not an event, it's a gathering. If you know other people that love the Lord and also are prayer warriors, I'd ask you to invite them to come too. If they are Christians who live in our town, they'll have kindred hearts with what we're praying. Again, we're not trying to demand anything from God. We're simply asking him to join us and to hear our heart. We recognize that our world is a mess. There are so many things happening, even in Tillamook, that need to be addressed. And so we're inviting you to come. I hope that you'll be here. In the Lord's name, bye bye.